Hello, here's a quick little update of where I am on the remote project. I have a nice remote box with all the touches and the big switch and the power LED all in. The front and the sides of the boxes are now glued together just with wood glue. And in the back you can see the switch connectors, the LED, and then all the touch pads. And they're all connected with thin 30 gauge Kynar insulated wire. This wire is typically used for wire wrapping, or it's where I started using it. It's really nice for interconnects. It's light, carries enough current, and you can easily bundle stuff together. So that's kind of where I am with that. I have a battery for this. The AA's really don't put out enough power for this, and well, they put out enough power, but they start at 3 volts and then they drop off pretty quickly, and they drop off to a point where the ESP won't work anymore. So this is a lithium iron phosphate battery, and it's a little smaller. I have it in a AA holder here that I've kind of modified to take one. The nice part about these batteries is they are 3.2 or 3.3 volts nominally, so they're right in the right range for the ESP to work well. And nicely, just like most lithium chemistries, they keep their voltage pretty well until they drop off at the end. And I did have a little battery management board that I've decided not to use in this version, maybe next version. So that's all ready. And it had a power switch. The power switch has been defeated because I don't really think I need it for this. And now the question is, how do I fit this in? And I need to fit this plus the ESP. This isn't the one I'm using, but it's a spare. And I think I found that the battery board fits down there at the bottom. And then the ESP will just kind of fit in there, just barely clears the contacts. And I'll probably put some foam or something in there to keep it from rattling around too much. So it looks like we're going to be okay with that. The first thing I need to do is I need to take, this is the breadboard setup. I'll click the power here. So it's the breadboard setup, the test setup, and each of these wires is a touch wire. So I've had touch wire and I have power coming in on the back. There used to be the LED here until I pulled it off. So this pretty much shows all of the connections I'm going to need, and how well you can see on that side. But right here I have a, what is that, an 8-pin? An 8-pin female connector that goes into the breadboard, and then I have another one on the side. This one has 2 spare pins, so it skips 2 pins and then goes, and that'll grab everything on this side, and this one starts at the top and works down 8 pins. This is the 30-pin version of the ESP rather than the, what is the other one, the 36 version. And the pinouts are actually, the ordering is actually different. It turns out that the ordering for this one is pretty convenient for what I'm trying to do. So what I'm going to do is take the touch wires here and solder them onto a little connector. And I'll do this side, and I'll probably show you that, and I don't know if I'll do the other side because I'm not sure I'm quite ready for that yet. But that'll at least get all of the touch connectors from this side hooked up in an appropriate way. I'm not going to care about order. Order is easy to do in software. So I have it in my third hand here. And the only thing I need to do is make sure there are four pins starting this way. Starting like that. 4 pins, and then a gap of 2, and then 2 more. So this little part here is probably going to be a little boring, but sorry. nice parts about the Kynar wire for this is that it's actually solid rather than stranded. And because of that, you can actually bend it and get it to stay the way you have it bended, which is one nice thing. And you also have the advantage that there's only one strand, and therefore you don't get a lot of other strands that might sort things out. So, soldering. And of course the third advantage is that it's very thin and therefore it doesn't have much thermal mass, which means it solders up really quick. So this is the stage of the project. It always feels a bit weird to me. I'm taking something that I have on a breadboard that works fine, and I'm putting it into something that's not a breadboard. And it seems like I always feel like I'm going to break something, and it's going to stop working. Even though that historically rarely happens. The other thing that's a bit annoying about this is because I'm switching over to battery power, I'm going to lose the ability to do debugging through the USB. Well, maybe not lose it, but not always have it. For some of the testing I want it to be plugged in, and for some of it I want it to be running on battery. So that means it's good to maybe think ahead of time about whether you want to get your software more done, more finished before you start putting it into an enclosure or something. Okay, so I did the first 4. Now I need to skip 2. I need to make sure I skip 2, otherwise. And my recollection, I have to go look at the specs, my recollection is that the ESP supports 10 touch inputs, skip 1, skip 2. But that in reality it actually really doesn't. You have pins assigned to other things, or at least on this board it doesn't. And it turns out that you can easily support 8 on the boards I have. And my original design used 8, and then I kind of remapped the functions I wanted, and ended up only using 7. Now, kind of annoyingly, you can support 6 on this side, but I'm going to have to put 1 more on the connector on the other side. And there we are. And that was just, won't be this version, but I'll just plug on like that. And using these connectors, it's a little cleaner connections. I could solder right to the pins, but that's a little ugly. And it also means I can pull the ESP off, and wouldn't be a problem here because the remote's easy in the light. But if I'm doing other sorts of stuff I have a landscape controller that uses ESP8266, and it's also socketed, and that's because it's mounted outside against the wall, and I don't want to pull it off. Another quick pro tip when you're doing this sort of stuff, buy more than one of the board that you're using. It's really useful to have one in the breadboard and just leave it there until, so you've got a reference for how your breadboard worked with the controller, and then you can use that to cross-reference against the one that you're actually building. So, it's first bit of soldering. I'll probably show more later. All the soldering is done. The connectors here. I have the ESP on one of the pieces of foam that it comes shipped on. And then we have the battery box ESP. And if I look from the side, you probably can't see. You can see it just barely fits. I can compress it. If you looked really closely, you'd see that the power switch sticks up a little bit, which means I'm going to have to grind it down a little bit. It'll be pretty quick with a Dremel. And now I can go off and plug in a USB port. Leave the battery switched off. It turned off. Turned out that switch that I didn't care about is pretty useful. I can switch it off so that I don't worry about anything weird with the battery when I'm running off USB. So go and do that, test, and we'll see what happens. And here we are with the final configuration. I thought I had some nice foam, but I didn't, so I just took a kitchen sponge and cut it up. That'll hold the battery tray, keep it from wobbling. It kind of gives a little space for the ESP as well. And then I ground down the slide switch so that it didn't stick up above. And now all I have to do is put the top on, or the bottom on. I originally thought that the bottom I'd need to attach in somehow, but it turns out with all of the edges cut, if you put it on, it will stay on. One of these sides is nicer than the other. I'm actually not sure which one is supposed to be which. They are symmetrical. And it's merely a matter of trying to get all those come back together. And there we have it. And pretty good. I don't know, I might figure out something to do with that elsewhere. And that is what it looks like. And I will go out and do a quick demo, assuming it still works. So here we are outside. That is on the left is the controller box. And then on the right is the 12-volt power supply for the lighting. And this is kind of underneath mine. And if we walk out, that's the fountain. And we have beds. There's some lights in the beds. There's some up high in the house. There's some overlights and also lights on the stairs. And then finally underneath the umbrella, we have some white 12-volt strip lights that I've attached on. So here's the remote. We turn it on. After a second, the power comes on. That's actually after it's connected to the Wi-Fi. And now I'm going to press the fountain button. And there's the fountain. And if I switch over, there's beds. Bed lights are on. Start looking up, see if I can get the house lights. House lights on. That's also little decklet lights, and then there's some lights on the stairs there, you might see. And then finally underneath, back up as much as I can, there's the umbrella lights. And I can make them dimmer. Saw that. And then there's full lights off. That should kill everything. So that killed all the lights. to the fountain. And the fountain's off. Turn it off. So that is the remote in action.